Grocery shopping in the 1970s in America was a completely different experience. No scanners at checkout, no club cards tracking your purchases, no self-checkout lanes. Just shopping carts, handwritten price tags, and cashiers who memorized prices and rang them up manually. The 1970s were when grocery shopping shifted from neighborhood markets to supermarket dominance. When inflation made every trip to the store painful, when couponing became an art form and comparison shopping became survival. Let's walk through what it actually felt like to buy groceries in the 1970s. Let's step into that world. Planning the trip started with the weekly grocery ads in the newspaper. Every Wednesday or Thursday, the newspaper was thick with grocery store inserts. You would sit at the kitchen table with scissors, clipping coupons and comparing prices between stores. Safeway might have ground beef on sale. A&P might have cheaper eggs. You would plan your route to hit multiple stores, each for specific deals. Gas was expensive, especially during the 1973 and 1979 oil crises, so you had to make the trips count. Your shopping list was written on paper, often on the back of an envelope. You organized it by store and by aisle. Running out of something midweek meant doing without until the next shopping trip. The grocery stores were smaller than today's supermarkets, but larger than the corner markets they were replacing. The major chains were Safeway, A&P, Kroger, Winn-Dixie, Piggly Wiggly, and regional chains that would eventually disappear. The stores had specific smells: produce, meat, floor wax, and cardboard. The floors were polished linoleum. The fluorescent lights hummed. The music was easy listening, piped through overhead speakers. The shopping cart was metal, with a child seat in front. The wheels squeaked and often pulled to one side. You would grab one from the parking lot corral, hoping for one without a wobbly wheel. Some stores required a deposit to use a cart. You would insert a quarter, and you would get it back when you returned the cart. This system kept carts from being abandoned in parking lots. The produce section was smaller and more seasonal than modern stores. In winter, the selection was limited to storage crops, potatoes, onions, cabbage, carrots, and apples. Exotic produce like kiwis or mangoes did not exist in most stores. Avocados were considered exotic. Everything was loose, not pre-packaged. You would select individual apples and potatoes. You would weigh them on the scale in the produce department. You would write the price per pound on a twist tie. The honor system trusted you to weigh and mark correctly. Lettuce was iceberg. Tomatoes were often pale and mealy. Fresh herbs were not available in most stores. The produce section was functional, vegetables for cooking rather than specialty items. The meat counter had actual butchers. You'd take a number and wait your turn. The butcher stood behind the counter in a white coat, often blood-stained. You'd tell him what you wanted, and he'd cut it fresh, wrap it in white paper, and write the price with a grease pencil. Ground beef came in different grades based on fat content. You could ask the butcher to grind specific cuts. He'd advise you on what to buy. The relationship with your butcher mattered. Regulars got better cuts. The meat was displayed in refrigerated cases, no shrink-wrapped styrofoam trays like today. Everything was wrapped in paper. The meat counter smelled like raw meat and refrigeration. The dairy section was smaller. Milk came in glass bottles from local dairies in the early 1970s and then transitioned to plastic jugs and wax-coated cardboard cartons. You would check the dates carefully because milk spoiled faster than today's ultra-pasteurized versions. Cheese was mostly American, cheddar, and Swiss. Yogurt was plain, or maybe strawberry. Eggs were in paper cartons, usually white eggs. Brown eggs were considered specialty items. The cereal aisle was where kids exerted influence. Boxes were colorful, with cartoon characters and toys inside. Brands like Cap'n Crunch, Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms, and Count Chocula filled the shelves. Sugar cereals dominated. You would stand in the aisle comparing prices and negotiating with your kids. The compromise was often one sugar cereal and one healthy cereal like Cheerios or Corn Flakes. Canned goods dominated the center aisles. Campbell's soup, Del Monte vegetables, and Hunt's tomato sauce. Everything came in cans. Frozen vegetables existed, but canned was cheaper and more common. You would stock up when items were on sale. Canned goods lasted forever, so buying 10 cans of soup at 19 cents each was smart shopping. Your pantry at home was full of canned goods, the foundation of 1970s cooking. The frozen food section was smaller than today. Frozen dinners were TV dinners in aluminum trays, and Swanson dominated. Frozen vegetables came in boxes. Ice cream came in rectangular cartons. Freezer space was limited, so you could not stock up as much. The frozen section was for convenience items and treats, not the extensive selection stores carry now. Checking out meant standing in line at a register with a human cashier. No scanners, no barcodes. The cashier looked at each item, found the price sticker or memorized the price, and typed it into the register manually. Fast cashiers were valued. They could ring up a full cart in minutes by memorizing prices. Watching an experienced cashier work was impressive, grabbing items, checking prices, typing numbers, all in fluid motion. The register was mechanical, not computerized. It made satisfying cha-ching sounds with each entry. The cash drawer would spring open with a bell sound. Everything was manual and slower than today's automated systems. Bagging your groceries was done by bag boys, usually teenage boys earning minimum wage. They packed your groceries in brown paper bags, carefully placing heavy items on the bottom, eggs and bread on top. Paper bags were standard. Some stores offered boxes. Plastic bags started appearing in the late 1970s, but paper dominated. You would carry the bags to your car yourself. Paying was cash or check. Credit cards existed but were not commonly used for groceries. You would write a check, show your ID, and the cashier would verify it was not on the bad checklist. The total was handwritten on your receipt. You could see each item and its price listed. Math errors happened, sometimes in your favor, sometimes not. Price inflation was brutal in the 1970s. Prices rose noticeably month to month. Something that cost 89 cents in January might be $1.19 by June. Shoppers noticed and complained. The inflation affected everything. Meat prices soared. Produce costs jumped. The weekly grocery bill that had been $30 became $40, then $50, then more. Families adjusted by buying cheaper cuts, more canned goods, and fewer treats. Store brands were cheaper alternatives to name brands. The packaging was plain, simple labels with generic designs. The quality was usually fine, but people viewed them as inferior. Store brands were seen as the frugal choice. Buying store brand meant you were being frugal. Some people refused, viewing name brands as superior. Others switched to save money. The choice said something about your economic status. Trading stamps were loyalty programs before computers made point systems easy. S and H green stamps, top value stamps, and plaid stamps were common. The store would give you stamps based on your purchase total. You would paste them into books at home. When you filled enough books, you would take them to a redemption center and exchange them for merchandise, toasters, lamps, blenders, and toys. Families would save stamps for months to get something special. The social aspect of grocery shopping meant seeing neighbors and having conversations. Shopping was slower, more personal. You would chat with the butcher, the produce manager, and the cashier. Social interactions were part of the trip. Running into neighbors meant stopping to talk, comparing what was on sale, sharing recipes, and catching up on news. The grocery store was a community gathering place, not just a transaction location. What defined grocery shopping in the 1970s in America was the manual nature of everything. No automation, no computerization, no scanning of items quickly through checkout. Everything took longer and required more human interaction. The experience was more personal but less efficient. You knew the butcher, the regular cashiers, the bag boys. Shopping took much longer. A trip that takes 30 minutes today took an hour in the 1970s. The economic pressure was constant. Inflation made every shopping trip more expensive than the last. Families had to budget carefully, clip coupons, compare prices, and make difficult choices about what they could afford. For people who shopped for groceries in the 1970s, the memories are specific. The smell of the produce section, the sound of the mechanical cash register, the weight of paper bags full of groceries, the frustration of rising prices, the satisfaction of finding a good deal. Grocery shopping in the 1970s represented an era between the old neighborhood markets and the modern supermarket experience. It was transitional, keeping some old-fashioned personal service while growing into something more automated and impersonal. For those who remember, shopping in the 1970s was part of a weekly routine, a chore that required planning, patience, and careful money management. The experience is gone, but the memories remain.